Chapter 9, Miss Sally and the Twins. Melissa hissed at Thad one morning as he passed near the lodge of Buffalo Horn. He slowed his steps. She walked past him and said in a low voice, "You know Miss Sally Buchanan?" "Sure I know her. What about her?" "Well, I guess you heard that they took her and her 2 little grandsons captive when they raided the Buchanan ranch. She's in camp not far from here." "We thought the Comanches had killed them," Thad whispered, walking along slowly behind her. "How do you know she's alive?" "I saw her. I went with Buffalo Horn and Talking Woman to the village of Warhawk. Chief Warhawk just made camp over on the other branch of this creek last night. Miss Sally wants to talk to you. She'll meet us at the water hole by the bend in the creek, where all the willows grow." That evening when he went for water, Thad slipped away from Blue Flower while she gossiped with the other women and hurried to the creek. There was a good deal of underbrush there. It was about halfway between the villages of Warhawk and Yellow Cloud. He dallied at the water hole, hoping the Comanche girls and women would soon go away, as he knew that Miss Sally would pretend not to see him if others were around. Finally, they all drifted away with their jars and buckets of water. Thad looked around and saw Miss Sally coming from a clump of bushes. He scarcely recognized her, dressed as she was in a ragged doe-skin dress. The sight of her warmed his heart as nothing else had done since he had first seen Melissa, for she was a vision of home. "Law me, Thad," she exclaimed, grinning gleefully. "This is a fine fix you've got yourself in." Thad grinned back at her. "Looks like you're in sort of a fix yourself, Miss Sally," he said. "How come they got you?" "I'll tell you about it, Thad. First, I must see if those young ones, Tommy and Timmy, are coming." She slipped back through the bushes and returned in a moment with her small grandsons. Thad would never have known them. They had black hair and dark brown eyes to begin with. Now they wore little suits of buckskin embroidered with bright-colored beads and dyed porcupine quills, with beautifully beaded moccasins. Their hair was long, and their skin was almost as dark as a Comanche child's from living in the sunshine. They could easily have passed for the well-loved sons of a Comanche chief. "I made those little suits for them," Miss Sally said, "and Warhawk's old woman did the trimming on them. You'd think they were your own young ones the way she pets and pampers them." "They're mighty cute little shavers," Thad remarked. "I don't blame her for making them over." "Well, I don't like it a little bit," Miss Sally said. "They're looking more like little Injuns every day. I'm powerful anxious to get them away from these savages." Old Warhawk and White Clover, his woman, would like nothing better than to raise them to be their own sons and good Comanche braves. That's what will happen, too, if I don't get them away from here. Thad told her of his plan to escape with Melissa. "Maybe you and the twins could escape with us," Thad suggested. She shook her head. Miss Sally was a practical woman. "No, Thad, we would only hinder you. But I'll do whatever I can to help you two get away. I will hope, if you make it, that you'll tell my sons, Buck and Bill, where you saw us last, and whose bands we are with, so they can come and fetch us home. I'd walk off and take my chances of escaping from the Red Devils if I didn't have these little ones to think of." "It's a wonder they've left you alive when they raided your place," Thad said. She laughed. "That's a story, boy. I just naturally captured myself, you might say. When I saw they were setting fire to the house, I ran out the back door with these 2 young ones in my arms. A big Comanche buck knocked me down and snatched them away from me. When I got up and managed to get my breath again, I saw him running off with them, one under each arm, a-kicking and a-squalling like 2 little bobcat kittens. I took after him, madder than a wet hen, yelling at him in Comanche. I reckon he didn't know what to make of an old white woman yelling at him in his own language, so he turned to look at me." "Did you throw a rock at him?" Thad asked, thinking that was what he would have done. "No," she said. "I didn't want to make him mad. I hollered at him, 'Let him go with you, and I'll take care of those papooses for you.' Or, 'Let me go with you, and I'll help take care of those papooses.' He turned and ran again, and I followed him to where he got back on his horse. I was afraid one of the bunch would knock my brains out, so I hid until they all got together and started off." Thad was tinkling with the excitement of her story. "Well, sir," Miss Sally went on, "I followed that band until they made their first night's camp. They went faster than I could go, so it was late when I finally got to their camping place by following their tracks. I hid for the rest of the night in the bushes close by, and in the morning I went into their camp and told them I was going along with them. I reckon they thought I was a mite out of my head, or else that I was just naturally hankering for a life in Comanche village. They didn't pay me any mind when I went along with them. They even let me ride one of the horses they had stolen. Happened to be one of our own horses, too." Miss Sally and Thad laughed together. She was able to laugh not because she was unfeeling about losing her husband and her home, but because she was not the kind to cry about what could not be helped. "Those Comanches might as well have butchered me right then and there as they take to these little ones away from me," she said. "They are all I've got to live for." After that, Thad and Melissa managed to see Miss Sally occasionally. Even though she was unable to do anything to help them, it was a comfort to have her near. She was someone who knew their own folk. As summer came on, bands of braves began to leave on foraging expeditions. They traveled toward the east, taking some of their women to do the work of the camp. Thad knew where they were heading, and he got more and more restless as the days passed. Now and then a band of raiders returned. Several prisoners were brought in, but most of them were small children who were as timid of Thad and Melissa as of their captors. Thad examined every horse they brought to see if any bore the Branson or the Conway brand. He wondered what outrages the raiders were committing in the region of Holmes. All summer the captives hoped for rescue or for some opportunity to escape, but they were watched every minute. The summer passed. The days were bright and sunny, but the nights were chill. Every day, while he was cutting meat to dry, Thad thought of escape. He would do as Miss Sally had suggested, escape with Melissa, then tell her sons where Timmy and Tommy and their grandmother could be found. "They'll make such a cleaning out of Comanches as no Injun ever thought of," she assured them. "They'll fetch those young ones home again, or my name isn't Sally Buchanan." She had made several suggestions, and Thad decided to act on one of them. He slipped a little of the meat under his buckskin shirt, and on his way through the village he gave a small piece of it to each dog he met. His hope was to make friends of the dogs, so they would not raise an uproar if they met him some night. When the meat on the racks had dried, he began taking a few strips each day from every rack he could approach without being caught. Although he had been taught that stealing is a sin, he hardly considered this stealing. Rather, this was a means of saving 2 lives. More than that, he had earned it by forced labor. Melissa was due some of it too, for she worked as hard as any squaw every day. Thad hoped it would prove a means of keeping them both alive on their journey home. He dug a little cave in the bank of the stream where the branches of a willow tree hung down over the opening. He lined the little cavity with flat stones and slipped a larger one over the opening. Almost every day he added to the cache of meat with pieces filched from the drying racks. Now and then Melissa was able to bring some honey and pecan cakes or some pemmican to add to it. Their plans were taking definite form now. With Miss Sally to furnish ideas that only an older person would think of, they felt sure that they would be able to escape. "But mind now," Miss Sally warned them. "Don't you let me know when you're leaving. I don't want to know anything about it. I'll know well enough when you've gone. Thad stopped among the ponies every day on his way to search for wood. Often he would single out Bullet and feed him dried berries and grass. He even gave him a little honey once. Of course, he did not neglect Little Bit, who came running whenever she saw Thad. Twice Thad sneaked from his bed at night to learn how well the horse herds were guarded, and Bullet and Little Bit came to him the same as ever. It was just as he had thought. A few young braves had been stationed to guard the ponies, but they were sound asleep beside a small fire. As the fall winds sent tumbleweeds rolling across the country, Thad got another idea. He would choose a night for their escape when the wind was blowing. Then he and Melissa would act like a pair of tumbleweeds. A tumbleweed would roll a little way, pause for some minutes, then roll rapidly again. Thad had few opportunities to talk with Melissa without arousing suspicion. When he would pass her with Indians nearby, he would murmur, "I'm still thinking," and this served to keep up their spirits. Early one morning, as he dipped his pail into the stream, he heard a twig break behind him, and a hand gently touched his shoulder. "Thad?" Melissa's voice brought him to his feet in a hurry. She stood close and in a hurried whisper said, "Thad, it's September, the Comanche moon, and they're figuring on starting to New Mexico in a few days to trade the horses to the Comancheros. Do you reckon they'll sell Little Bit?" This came as a shock. Thad knew that the village was expecting to move, but he thought the Indians had already sold or traded all the horses they intended to. "Well, I don't believe Scarponi will let them sell Little Bit if he can help it," Thad said. "He loves her, but I'm sure they'll sell Bullet. He's nobody's horse in particular." Thad had suspected that something was about to happen. Little Rabbit had been having him help her and Blue Flower press dried meat into tight packs and put them into buckskin bags. She had made him take the buffalo robes out of the teepee and shake them and hang them on the bushes, just as Ma used to do with the quilts at home. Then she had had them rolled tight and tied with rawhide strings. He had seen other women of the village busy doing the same thing. "I heard Buffalo Horn telling this woman to get everything ready to move," Melissa said. "That was the day before yesterday, but this is the first time I've had a chance to tell you." "We'd better make our break soon then," Thad said. "That's what I was thinking," Melissa agreed. "If they take Bullet and the other horses that know me, it will be hard to get another one when we try to leave. How about tonight?" Thad felt excited and short of breath and thought, and he had to admit he was a little afraid too. "Miss Sally stopped me this morning on my way here," Melissa said. "She told me, 'Time you young ones are a-traveling, this village is going to move.'" "Well, that settles it then," Thad said. "Miss Sally knows best. We'll get ready tonight. Do you think you can make it?" "Of course I'll be ready." Melissa's voice trembled, and Thad wondered if it was from fear or excitement. After all, they would be risking their lives. Thad hastily pulled his plans together and gave her directions. "Lizzie," he said, "we've got jerky and pemmican enough to feed us for almost 2 weeks if we don't eat it up too fast. I'll try to get some of Little Rabbit's pecans, too. I'll try to get some more of the honey pecan cakes and pemmican," Melissa promised. "Now don't be afraid," Thad admonished her. "We'll make it all right. Little Bit will get you home if we should get separated. She's found her way home more than once." "How will I know when to leave Buffalo Horn's lodge?" she asked. Thad had thought of that too. "I'll just give a little quavering call like a screech owl. Do you know what they sound like?" "Of course I do," she said. "I've listened to them many a night. I used to be scared when I heard them, but Papa told me what they are." "All right then. When you hear the screech owl 2 or 3 times close together, go to the creek where we have our cache." "Where will you be?" "I'll be with the horses. I'll get Bullet and Little Bit and bring them down to the creek." What if some of them wake up? She asked timidly. Play like you're a tumbleweed, Thad said. You know, squat down behind one and pull your robe over your head. Then crawl along easy with it and stop now and then like a tumbleweed does. She giggled. I think I can be a tumbleweed, she said. And if I'm caught, I'll pretend I'm walking in my sleep. I really do walk in my sleep sometimes, and Buffalo Horn and Talking Woman know it. Their name for me is Sleepwalk Girl. Well, that's a good thing, Thad said. These Comanches are superstitious about people walking in their sleep, but don't get caught if you can help it. Shh, shh, she cautioned, and she bent suddenly down to the water to fill her jar. Someone's coming. Thad rose with his filled pails and started back toward the village just as a woman and several girls broke through the bushes on the bank above. All that day as he worked, Thad thought over their plan for escape. He considered what might happen if they should be caught, and he prayed a little as he thought about what might happen and what they might do to Melissa. Her captors, Buffalo Horn and his woman, seemed to be more cruel than Yellow Cloud and Little Rabbit were to him. He wondered if it was right for him to let her take the chance. He collected some rawhide strips for tying their robes on their horses, and did not dare take a saddle. There were only a few in the village, for the Comanches generally sold or bartered away those they stole. They preferred to ride with only a blanket or with a saddle of their own making. He had already cached a hackamore and a regular bit bridle under his buffalo robe in the lodge. What would happen if they did not get away? How long would it take them to reach home? And how would they keep from freezing if there should be a northerner? Worst of all, what if the Comanches should catch them? He tried to think of anything he might have forgotten. He believed he had made a pretty good plan and that he had prepared everything well. The attempt should not fail. Dun dun dun. That's the end of chapter 9, friends. We'll keep reading tomorrow.